Today, we're going to take a look at getting data out of your Sage estimating to do some analyzing in AI. So there's all sorts of different things that seems like a lot of clients we work with are experimenting with AI, trying to figure out what we can do with it, or kind of intimidated of it and things of that nature. So I want to kind of take a moment here and just kind of show some things that are pretty basic to do with your estimating data with some sort of an AI tool. The tool at this point really doesn't much matter if you use ChatGPT or Copilot or all sorts of different ones out there and things like that. What I'm going to show you pretty much works with all of them, with just different variations of information that it may give you and so forth. So what I want to take a look at in this example is one of the things AI is really good for is analyzing data, looking for discrepancies in it, showing trends, showing different information without having to go off and write a bunch of formulas or a report to do it. So if you think about in your estimating world, there's a lot of things that I see a lot of clients out there that generate many estimates. And the estimate's critical when we put a bid together and so forth, and an estimate's critical for comparing against our job and things of that nature. An estimate's critical for going back and trying to compare this one with other estimates that we've done to see how this estimate maybe comes out and things like that. But for the majority, a lot of these estimates sit in our database of estimates and things like that. Nobody really goes back and does a very good job of utilizing some of that information that you've got at your fingertips. So that's what I want to take a look at today, is actually taking some of your estimating data and show you how you could drop that out to something and get it into some AI and kind of ask them generic questions and get information about that data pretty easily. So in this session, we're going to go through at a very quick pace and show you how to do it. And then we're going to go back, and for those that are interested in actually doing it, we're going to slow it down and actually explain the pieces, set them up and things like that a little bit to get better results out of your data. So I'm going to bring up my Sage estimating. And I'm going to go up to File, and I'm going to go back to my Manage Estimates here. So Manage Estimates is where I can see a list of all my estimates in the environment. And if I click up on the top folder there, it'll actually show me every estimate that's in the system. Now, with every estimate that's in the system, some estimates may be copies of other estimates and estimates that you want or don't want. So in my case, I've actually got a kind of preset what columns I want. I've also got a definable field here that I've got the word yes in on just the estimates that I want to be analyzed in my comparisons here. So in this case here, I've got some different project types, the name of the projects, the estimators that put the projects together, their job size, what the contract amount was, or the estimate total and so forth, whether we were awarded or lost a job, city, state, when it was bid, just some information about the job. And like I said, at the end of this, we're going to talk about how to go through and turn these columns on or off. But right now, I've already kind of got this set up with the information that I want to dump out for this example. So when I get to this screen of all this different list of estimates that I've got, I can hit Export, and that will create an Excel spreadsheet of this data. So I'm going to go ahead and just say Save there. And I'm going to say, yes, I want to open that worksheet next. So if you notice in Excel, it's the same data that I just looked at. So there's about, 97 estimates in this list, all sorts of different information. That's what I'm going to use to analyze at this moment. So if you think about this example, this might be like kind of an overall. You notice that I don't see every line item in these estimates and things like that. And this example is just kind of the estimate heading itself and the value of those estimates and things of that nature. So I'm going to bring my web browser up. And today I've been kind of working with this Claude AI and so forth. So like I said, it really doesn't matter what flavor of AI you do some of this with. It seems like a lot of them give some sort of variation of similar information. This one I kind of like just because it seems like it kind of does a little bit more on some of the different analyzing that I'm seeing. So I'm going to go to File Explorer. I'm going to find that spreadsheet that I just had, and I think I threw it on my desktop, and here it is right here. So I'm going to drag and drop it into here. So now that it's part of this, now this is the thing that's really cool about AI in the fashion of, if I took that to Excel, I could write formulas and say, okay, how many dollars was this estimator awarded? How many dollars was that estimator awarded? But like in this case here, I could just ask general questions. I don't have to write a bunch of formulas and so forth. So I'm going to kind of give it a little rough idea of what that data is, though you don't necessarily have to. So give me a summary of these estimates and maybe some of the trends that you see or so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and just work on that. So it's going to actually open up that Excel spreadsheet, and it's going to write some of its own little code here to try to open that data and figure out what's in that spreadsheet that I gave it. And it goes through sometimes a few different variations there as it's trying to figure out what some of the different data I might be interested in seeing is out of that. And I could have been more definitive in my question that we'll get into kind of in my next scenario too, where I could actually ask it the specific questions that I wanted to know about. So in this case here, I've left it very vague of what I've asked for. So that way I really want it just to kind of look at the data and see what it could tell me about that information that I probably wouldn't have just thought about on my own necessarily. So as I look at the results here, it's going to tell me that, yep, we had that 97 estimates. Total contract value may not mean much as far as this wasn't what we were awarded or anything like that. That's just kind of the total amount that we had bid in that list of estimates I had, what the average value was, the mean value, what type of date range that maybe it had. So it was from 2014 to 2019 with some of the data that I've given it. Kind of a summary, what type of projects that we've been estimating. So in my case here, 54 of those projects were retail stores, about 56% of it. So just think about what I've seen here so far is a lot of summing things together, counting stuff, calculating percentages and so forth, all pretty easy. What's my estimator performances and so forth. So myself, I've got 36 estimates totaling some sort of a dollar amount. So my projects are averaging some sort of value. I've got Cottrell and Brett here with some sort of values or whatever theirs is. I could go back and now as I look through here, this is just kind of telling me who's bidding the work. It's not really telling me how much they were awarded or lost or anything like that at this point. But then down here, it's going to just show an overall summary of 60 of those projects were awarded, 22 were lost. I'm still estimating 10 of them. 5 of them are pending that maybe they haven't made their mind up on the decision yet. Here's kind of my geographical location of where those estimates were at. Maybe some of the different ranges of values as far as what type of volume we're estimating in our projects and so forth. What project sizes. So kind of average square foot of what office space we're doing, the average square footage of hospitals and clinics and restaurants and things like that. So there again, just information kind of showing me what are, in this case, it's kind of looked at the different volume of how much we were estimating each year. So that way we could kind of tell that 2019 was one of the highest years that I ended up with in my data here and so forth. Retail stores we've been doing all through the years. Grocery stores we've been primarily just 2018 and 2019. Hotels we had only been present in 2017 and 19 for some reason. Schools that had an increase in 2019. There's seasonal patterns, there's success rates. This information is all off of just a basic list of information in an estimate, or my estimates, I guess it would be, because I just do the main headings. So as you can see here, I didn't sit there and write formulas. I don't know how long it would take me to write this in Excel of all these formulas to analyze all these combinations, but I'm assuming a good morning or a good portion of time to come up with all this information. So now let's say I'm going to just say, please graph it. So it's going to go back and actually look at the data that it's generated, and it's going to write there again some other formulas to try to create some sort of graphing for some of this information. And there again, nothing I can't do in Excel, but how long would it take me to do it of that information and so forth? And if you had the information of exactly what I wanted, this one's going to take a little bit of time just because I've kept it so generic in what my questions were at the moment and so forth. But this is all types of things. If you think about, maybe I gave it the estimate detail. Maybe I gave it 2 estimates. How does this estimate compare with 9 other schools that we've done, or things like that? So when you're asking the questions, you can really go back and ask a lot of information. what item is in this spreadsheet. Show me any items that are different than other items and other estimates and things like that. If I was giving it the item detail, you could do those type of analyzings with that information. Okay, so let's see what I ended up with on the graphic side of things. So number of projects. So this kind of just shows a representation of how many different projects, and it's going off and still color coding it by the different project types and so forth. So that way I could tell retail stores, looks like we did the most in 2016, or maybe I could tell that 2015, it looks like we were only doing a little bit with road work and some retail stores. It didn't look like we did any offices or other things. So there again, just a visual on my data, kind of giving me a little key observation at the bottom of it. Same type of thing. So based on what's the square footage of the projects that we're doing. Here's my monthly estimates. So what estimates? So in my case, a lot of my data is kind of fictitious here. So it looks like a lot of my estimates I put in there must have been around the July range, but you can kind of see where different estimates have hit in different periods of time. So I've got like the number of projects is over here on the side it's went with, and then it said contract value over on this side and so forth. So that way I can kind of tell that the contract value kind of follows a little bit the same pattern as my number of estimates that I'm doing. Pretty basic. Okay, let's go ahead and do another twist. So there again, it's just words that I'm asking, and it's got to figure out what I'm looking for. So let's say that I want to give me estimator awarded count and percentage by project type. Same type of thing. So there again, not writing a bunch of formulas or anything of that nature myself with the data. It's something that I've dropped the data in at once, and now I can sit there and query all sorts of different information from that data that it can give me results on. Okay, so here's the different percentages. So it looks like control is the one that's closing the most amount of work as far as percentage wise. So 19 out of 36, 50% for mine. Controls was doing 72%, whatever the case was. Some different successes on what types of projects. There again, what type of my projects that are awarded, where they were at. Brett's, so I could tell that Brett's maybe not done any hospital work or the clinic work or things of that nature. Maybe I could tell that Control's just working on retail stores and so forth. So there again, gives me a nice little analyzation on that information, and just very powerful because I can sit there and just ask basic questions, and the system can write formulas and graphs. And there again, I don't know how long that would take me by hand, but if I was going to do all those charts and all that, you're talking probably a good amount of time versus a few minutes that we've kind of looked at that here and so forth. So that's kind of where I wanted to kind of expose people to AI a little bit about what it can do and so forth, because analyzing data seems to be a very, very strong point of what this technology is bringing along. So with that being said, let's talk about how did I get that data out and what would make your data better to get that information out. So if I go ahead then and bring my estimating back up, when I started this, I went to my manage estimates and had this magical screen already set up with all this information that I wanted to dump out. So what I actually did here is a few critical things to make that information good. I pretty much went through all these different estimates that I wanted to do something with and made sure that everybody has a project type. Everybody had an estimator. Everybody's got some sort of contract amount for what my estimate values were at this point in time. Most estimators might estimate, I don't know what the number is, let's say 10 different variations of an estimate before they get awarded the project or something of that nature, or maybe they keep multiple copies as they go along. So a lot of time I don't want every single estimate. So in this case here, I'm using my definable field 10 at this point to be just kind of a flag for whether I want this estimate to be in this list or not. And then I've got a definable field set up for my, whether it was awarded or lost and city and state, and some of that stuff was already in there. So as we look at this information, let's take a step back and talk about how we use some of these fields and how do I get somebody to be consistent with awarded or lost or things like that for this estimate status. So I'm going to take a step back here and I'm going to go to Management Console. And there's a couple things in Management Console that Sage has added in the last few years that a lot of clients don't realize to really help make some of this cover page information more consistent. So if I take a look at my databases on the side here, and the database I'm looking at right now is, let's say, this one here. And if I said Edit, Project Types, this is where I went through and added whatever the different project types I want. So there again, I'm trying to keep people consistent because if I'm going to dump this out for reporting or things like that, I don't want grocery store spelled differently on different projects. I want to basically have some sort of consistency. Now, in estimating, it'll still allow you to put in values that are not in the dropdown as you're building them and so forth also. So as we go through here, you can kind of see I could type in new names, I could hit add, I could come back and hit delete or rename and things like that and build this list out to be whatever type of information that I want to see. Estimator, same thing. I want to keep the estimator's names consistent and so forth. So as I go through there, this is where I could go through and say, here's what the different drop-down list is going to be. So when I'm working on an estimate, I've got standardization. Same thing with user-defined fields. So user-defined fields are the 1 through 16 that people see that a lot of time they just skip. But this is excellent because this is where I could say definable field 10 is where I said it's going to be included on my dashboard reports or my AI reports. And this type is going to be text, date, list, numeric. So this is where you can tell it what type of field that you're setting up if you're setting up a new one. So text is kind of the default where you can just type in a value. List is handy because if I pick list, now I could build a standardized dropdown. So that way, yes, I went on the dashboard and no, I do not. So I did kind of the same thing here with this estimate pending awarded loss. So there again, a list, and I've got mine preloaded with we awarded the job. It's still in the estimating process. We lost it. It's still pending, whatever status as I want. So there again, trying to keep consistency. So all the estimates are kind of stored together. I've got one out here for the engineer's estimated value. So that way, if I wanted to know what this project was estimated at to compare against what I've estimated them at. So maybe I've got a numeric one or a different stage and things like that. So that way, dates, text, numbers, drop downs, this is where you're going to help build that consistency to keep these estimates somewhat better on the reporting, but to be consistent in how things are spelled. With that being said, the other thing that they've added in estimating, if I go back and look at my estimates here, is if I just look at a estimate, they've added this bar here that has this little red mark for recommended fields. So recommended fields are not necessarily required fields, they're recommended. So estimator, we recommend project type. So these key fields that I've set up that I want to basically say are things that I really want somebody to fill in, I've got them flagged as recommended fields. So what these do for you now is if you go through there and tell it what fields you think are recommended or that you really want an estimator to kind of pay attention to, if I go back and let's say I started a new estimate here, you notice these red values pop up. So there again, I don't necessarily have to fill them in. I could hit OK and ignore it. If you notice my OK has a couple of asterisks next to it to let me know that there are empty recommended fields in the group, but you can start to see there's that project type. There's what's in my standard dropdown list. So I can sit there and say, oh yeah, this is at least a hotel. I know that much so far. And maybe I know who's estimating it so far, but maybe I don't know the job size yet because I haven't really looked at the prints yet to have a good idea. As I go down through here, do I want to include this on the dashboard? No, because I'm just in the estimating stages. This job is one that I'm still working on, so maybe it's in the estimate status. So now I can start to kind of fill these out as I want to. And you'll notice that I still left one blank, so it's still got the asterisks, next to that. But if I did go back through and give everything an information, whoops, maybe not a set square foot, there we go. Now you notice that those little dots went away because anything that I've recommended is filled out. So that's kind of how you could try to help get these estimates flagged better for some of these reportings to go across multiple estimates. So now let's take a look at when I first started this, I went to Manage Estimate and I had this grid of information. So to get to the grid, if I was looking at a particular estimate, this is how I could go in and actually highlight that estimate. I could hit edit and update this. So instead of having to go open an estimate, go to the info, change it, open an estimate, go to the info, change it. This is kind of handy because I could actually sit there and click on an estimate. Oh, that's not right. Let's edit it, change it. Let's go down to the next one. So I could just pretty much go down through this list and just hit edit and modify any of these as I'm going through trying to figure out, okay, what are the top 50 estimates I'm going to dump out for this analyzation? What are the project types? Because we haven't used project type before. Let's go back in and get the project type updated. Maybe we haven't done awarded and lost before. So I want to go back through here and get these estimates flagged as awarded and lost. So that way I can kind of go through the different estimates and pretty quickly go down to those particular fields and update them as I need to. The other key thing I did to get this information out is when I look at all estimates, I had this grid set up to do a pretty decent job. So when you think about this grid system, in the next version of version 25, I'll be doing a video on saving these as a standard layout. So in version 24 that I'm on at the moment, I don't have that option, but in 25, they'll let me save these columns as a different name. So up here, you have a drop down almost like in your spreadsheet layouts where you can have different layouts for different sets, columns, and things like that. In this case, what I've done is it just keeps track of what I had set last. So that's why each time I open it up, it kind of starts with this. And this is kind of what I want for dumping out to the AI search that I was doing and so forth. If I go up to columns, this is where you can see all the different columns that are out there so you can decide what you want to see or not see in your list of information. So a lot of that different cover page information and so forth is all somewhere in this list. Maybe I wanted to put in there what plan date or revision we had, an estimated start end date, some of my user-defined fields and so forth. Maybe I wanted to know, I think I've got most of my stuff on that I had. Architect company, some of those type of things, what server, maybe who it was created by. So maybe if I've got someone didn't keep their status of estimator in there, I could tell who created it maybe, when it was last modified if I cared. Let's turn a couple of those type of things on. So if I go to the right, I could kind of see this particular user is the one that modified it. Here's the last time it was modified. So that way, maybe if somebody didn't have an estimator flag on there, I could go back through and see what their login is that was associated with that estimate building and so forth. And then the other thing I've done here is, if you notice, this funnel is a different color than the rest of these and so forth. So that's where I've actually clicked on this and I said, I only want the ones with yes. So if I go ahead and turn this yes off at the moment, now this is a lot larger than that 97, because this might be every estimate I've done under the sun. So if you notice down here, I've got some yeses, I've got some blanks that haven't been filled in, I've got some C's for some other things that I was kind of doing and so forth. So it's just a way that, yep, within that data, just give me the ones with yes on it. Maybe I would just want to say within that data, just show me the ones that this estimator did. So there again, very easy to kind of build what type of information I want. And then once I get it, I can hit export to, then load it up into some other place to do more searches with it. Or maybe I also want, let's just say, where's my awarded here? So let's say I want to drop another filter on this. And let's say I just want the awarded estimates. Same type of thing then. So now I've got a filter on just the reportable estimates for me as the estimator and the ones that I was awarded type of thing. So pretty handy. when the next version comes out and you can save these layouts and so forth, it also saves your filters. So that way, as soon as you go to that particular layout, it starts with some sort of look. So keep out for more information. Probably the next thing I'm going to do is try to show some searches on how to get line item detail out of your estimate, so you can get into maybe doing searches on what's masonry ran on school projects within a particular year or things of that nature. So if you think about it, any of your data that you can export out, you could drop into some sort of a little AI tool that can do some analyzing and comparisons and things like that. So that's probably the next stage I want to look at, is getting into more detail from these estimates into some sort of searchable criteria. Thanks for watching.